Well, greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to tonight's middle of the night or early morning bonus upload wherever you may live. Before we get into this very interesting bonus upload, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon. And folks, please share this video and leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of it really does help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, it does matter. Now, everyone, I've taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to tonight's middle of the night, early morning bonus upload. Shall we? All right, guys. So we talk a little bit about Dulce, a little bit about this, a little bit about that, a lot about cryptids. And as many of you know, I am totally fascinated with Dulce, which, for those of you who don't know, it's a deep underground military base where the alien agenda, the Dracos, the Nordics, all have this kind of secret deep underground military base with the spineless government that runs this country, and they did atrocities against, and still do, against humans, women and children mainly, and men, but mainly women and children. Genetic experiments and this and that. Well, there is a project that has been worked on for quite some time called Project Beta, and it is how freedom fighters such as Bill Cooper, Phil Schneider, Thomas Castiello, all really, it's the war is still going on, and this is what will get us to victory. Check it out. Today's first terrifying experience. In small town, rural Tennessee, kids play outside until there is no light to see by, and even then they find ways to stay outside until brought inside by the threat of punishment. I was no exception. On Saturday evening, when I was 2 months into turning 12, as I was coming inside from playing, I was stopped in my tracks by a strange sound, a mix of yipping growing into a barking growl. Coming from an easy 30 or so yards, I was intrigued. I stood on the porch looking into the tree line that faced the house, trying to find the source of this sound. I expected a dog to emerge, as people were always dumping their dogs in the country, and it was rare these animals ever found homes. Most just roamed the woods. Sitting down on the porch steps, I waited for what I thought would be one of these dogs, but nothing. After a solid 10 minutes and a loss of more of the dwindling light, I stood to go inside. The sound came again, this time deeper and much more guttural. It chilled me, the sound. Looking out into the trees, I saw a very tall figure move in between the trees. It was taller than the fence outlying the trees, and those are a good 4 to 5 feet. I took hold of the door. The sound came again, and it felt like it was going right through me. It's difficult to explain. I felt as if I rooted into the spot. I opened the door and moved to step inside. My eyes were locked on the spot where this thing moved toward the fence. I saw a slice of what looked like a shadow coming to life and put what I thought to be a hand on the fence. I didn't wait for more. I stepped inside the house and closed the door after me. I've never spoken of this to another person before now, although I've never doubted what I saw. I never had a name for it. I saw no real features other than vague outline of what prompted me to share this were the details of that outline. It had arms of impossible length, 2 ears on the side of its head that were long and slender. Its upper torso was broad along the shoulders and tapered down. I couldn't see the legs for the fence, nor its feet. I had never heard the term Dogman until about a month ago. I haven't been 12 for several long years now, but I know that's what I saw in that tree line. Today's second terrifying experience. This experience is not mine, but it is my uncle's. My uncle lives in West Virginia, one of the more remote states in the eastern United States. While his main house is in town, he also has a small cabin up on Spruce Knob, where he and my aunt would go during the summers. This cabin's very remote and accessed only by jeep trails, and it's not connected to the electrical grid. So my aunt and uncle decided to take advantage of a 3-day weekend sometime in the late 80s and headed out to the cabin for some fly fishing and relaxation in the woods. When they arrived, my aunt went out to sketch some while my uncle unpacked and built a fire in the fireplace, as it was already getting dark. As night began to fall, my uncle noted how unusually quiet the woods were. He's been camping, canoeing, backpacking all over the world, and he still says that this is the quietest he has ever heard the woods. He and my aunt packed everything up and went to bed late, sometime around midnight. My uncle awoke to a strange thumping and scratching noise coming from outside. He thought it was probably a bear or coyotes trying to get at the dog. He grabbed his .444 Marlin to go and deal with it as he pulled the gun from out the case. The door outside swung open, and a large, hairy, vaguely humanoid shape appeared silhouetted in the moonlight. He said he never really quite got a good look at it, but the one thing he remembers is the overpowering smell, a stench of decay, and 2 glowing reddish, yellowish eyes. He quickly emptied the .444, and while he didn't get a kill shot, he did scratch the beast's arms, which caused it to run squealing into the woods. He and my aunt immediately grabbed their things, got in their Bronco, and hightailed it out of there. Whatever my uncle saw never really bothered them again, and when he returned in the morning with more people and firepower, he found little evidence of an intrusion except for a single strange clawed footprint on the front of the cabin and claw marks on the door. I don't know whether to believe my uncle or not, as he's known for telling tall tales. However, unlike his other stories, he was completely serious when he told this one, and my aunt backed him up. This experience has always deeply disturbed me, as I as well spent a lot of time in the woods. I'll be making a trip up to the cabin this summer, and maybe I'll get a chance to see that strange beast as well. Today's third terrifying experience. Little timeline, this was around 2015, really not sure the month, but it was around 11 p.m. I was driving from my dad's house to my mom's. My dad has about 75 acres of really spooky land where I've experienced some paranormal things. Anyway, I was driving, and I had just started down the long driveway when I felt like I was being watched. Not cool, but it happens more often than you would believe. I'm nearing the highway when I see a dark shape at the edge of the woods. Oh well, probably a deer, and I shake it off. We have tons of wildlife in the area, from deer to panthers to the occasional bear, and then it starts chasing me. Keep in mind, please, that this crap is practically normal in my mind. I've had lots of weird stuff happen, and it's not like it was barreling at me. It just moved after my car, staying at the edge of the woods. So I keep my pace. I turn onto the highway and speed up to 50 or so. I keep noticing something in my peripheral, though, so I slow down and start looking for what it could be. A few yards behind me, I see this huge dog. I've grown up with large dogs. My aunt had a St. Bernard growing up, and I've had various other large dogs. This thing was literally the size of my car. I know I've mentioned bears before, but bears don't chase cars. And we only have black bears, which are like the most docile kind. Okay, now I'm freaking out. I gun it, releasing a long stream of curses and telling my car to get over it. It was a poorly kept '95 Honda Accord. I had tons of trouble with it dying on me, so any time I had pushed it, I made sure to speak kindly to it. I didn't care at this point. I was simply trying not to die. I seemingly can't shake it for too long, so in an act of bravery, really stupid, I pull over in a church parking lot, thinking maybe it's some sort of hell beast and it won't come into the light or onto church land. No, I was wrong. I stopped and get my phone out to call my boyfriend. In that span of time, it catches up and jumps onto the car. I can see, feel, and hear the metal popping and creaking. I see drool splatter onto my windshield. I scream, dropping my phone. It jumps off the car onto the hood, where I get a glimpse of it before it goes into the cemetery and disappears. A gated cemetery. It jumped the fence. It's definitely a dog, built like a Rottweiler pit mix, but darker and larger. Solid black with paws the size of dinner plates. It had a huge head, almost the size of my car window. I don't know why it decided to leave me alone, but it did, and I am ever so thankful. I called my boyfriend, crying. He calmed me down and listened, and told me that when I got home I should take pictures. I did, or at least I tried. By the time I got to my mom's, the only thing left was a single dent in the roof of the car and some faint claw marks that were more like indentations in the metal. Today's fourth terrifying experience. When I was about 11, my mom decided to move me and my brothers from Richmond, Virginia, to a small town called Colonial Heights, or better known as Colonial Whites because of the history of being a sundown town whose residents used to consist of nothing but white people for decades until about the 60s or 70s. Even then, there were probably only one or two black people, as well as being very open about its local chapter of the Ku Klux Klan. I wish I was kidding, but no, look it up. Anyway, I moved to this place and met some guys and basically became like a group of friends who did everything together. We would frequently meet up on the railroad tracks because how we got around, and it was a good hangout place because you didn't have to walk directly on the tracks as there were dirt paths, which in turn also had little offshoot paths to different parts of the neighborhoods or streets. Now, from time to time, I would experience some weird and strange things on these tracks, or very close by. It was as if maybe something was out there with us, watching or waiting. People in the town and the adjoining small village may often use these tracks for travel or hang out, so it's not out of the ordinary to see or hear certain things, but sometimes I had no explanation for what I experienced. One particular day I was walking along these tracks to get to a path that led beside some friends' houses. I was about 11 or 12, and I remember walking along the track. I was far enough away from the main road and any paths that led directly to the neighborhood, so if I had to run from a dog, I'd probably be screwed. It was about 11 in the morning, as I wanted to get there early enough to hang for a couple of hours. As I'm walking on the tracks, I hear leaves crunching from the forest area, and the woods aren't dense, so you can see a lot of open area. I peer into the forest. I don't see anything, shrug it off as a bird, but as soon as I start walking again, the leaves start crunching again. So I overthink and look down and see if I'm stepping on leaves that are in the tracks, and to my surprise, there's no leaves, just rocks, metal, and wood. And believe me, that's a whole different sound when you're walking. I stop and start again, and so does the leaves crunching from the forest area on my left, which is also the path that's a ways up ahead that leads to my friend's house is located on. So I say screw it and take off. As I'm running and thinking in my head that it's probably nothing, I'm tripping until out of the corner of my eye I can see leaves in the forest area moving. My brain automatically said, hey man, even though you can clearly didn't see anything, just imagine it's a dog. Newsflash, it wasn't a dog. I don't know what it was. Now that I'm thinking about it, it reminds me of a scene in Evil Dead where the camera is rushing through the forest. As I get closer to the path I have to take, I'm scared for my life because, as I said earlier, there wasn't nothing there, but there was something moving, and it was moving fast. Finally, I get to the path, and I turn into it, and as I ran, I could hear whatever it was behind me, almost taunting me, like it had power to take me at any moment, but it didn't. It was toying with me. I get about where the house is located to right on the path I'm taking. As I get closer, I hear it move back into the forest and move a bit away. I break off the path and run up the steps to the front door. My friend opens the door and looks at me and asks if I ran and if I was okay. I said yeah and was skeptical that he wouldn't believe me. I said I was chased by a dog or something, and he responded there was a family of fox, and the mother was very protective of it. I just said yeah, maybe, but deep down inside I knew it wasn't fox. I've seen those fox he was talking about before, and what I saw or didn't see was not that. Whatever it was didn't want me that day. I was new to the area, and it was its territory, and it wanted me to be aware, I believe. It sounds crazy until you learn about the town's history. Today's fifth terrifying experience. Let me preface by explaining a little bit about myself. I've always been kind of a night owl, and my current profession actually entails me being up all night, so the dark really doesn't bother me. I've pretty excellent night vision. I don't panic. I'm a medical professional and a bit of an outdoorsman. I'm a big guy, 6'2", 260, biology nerd. My first experience I had was on October 22nd, 2005, on a stretch of back road in the Mojave Desert, in the vicinity of Joshua Tree in Yucca Valley, California. It was the third or so day of quail season. I was all tagged up and ready to go hunting. I had a little Jack Russell Terrier named Gus that a friend of mine let me borrow for the day since I couldn't own dogs or cats. Allergic as all hell, I drove out, parked my Jeep on a turnout at the dirt road intersection. There are a zillion dirt roads out there, and some of the bigger ones actually have stop signs at the intersection. It was a good day and getting a little late, but I hadn't hit my bag limit yet. I decided that I would stay out a bit past sundown to try and bag the last few birds on my permit. I was dressed pretty warmly, and Gus didn't seem to mind, so away we went. By the time I hit my bag limit, the sun had been down over the horizon for about an hour. Getting back to the road was easy enough, and following it back to the Jeep was as well. Around the time full twilight set in, I came to an intersection with a stop sign on both directions, and I was getting my bearings when Gus froze mid-trot and immediately started growling with his hackles up. He was a pretty chill dog, so watching him go from happy little derp to DEFCON 1 so fast was alarming on its own. I scanned the area to see what he might be upset about, because my first guess was javelina, or wild pigs, and all I had was a shotgun loaded with bird rounds. As I said, these were dirt roads. Each road is roughly the same width as an average two-lane city street. On the corner opposite the one we were on, I spotted a creature moving with the same general gait as a rooster, but without bobbing its head. What initially cued me in that it wasn't a chicken was simple fact that from the head to foot it must have been close to 3 feet. Based on body mass, I'd say somewhere between 40 to 50 pounds. I tied Gus's leash to my belt so he wouldn't bolt after it and waited for it to wander off. It loitered on the corner for a minute, then without making so much as a flutter, it made a roughly 9-foot standing leap from the ground to the perch atop of the stop sign. Definitely not a chicken. At this point, I decided it was prudent to be armed, so I popped 2 fresh shells in my shotgun and held it at the ready. When I looked back up, I saw its eyes. The 2 things that immediately sprang to my mind, this is where biology geek comes in, were that 1, they were forward-facing, meaning this animal was likely predatory, and 2, they were proportionally enormous, meaning it was likely fully nocturnal. I realized that a 3-foot tall predatory nocturnal 40-pound animal that can make a 9-foot standing leap was now regarding me at a high perch, albeit from roughly 40 feet away, and that I was in a bad position. I leveled my shotgun and loaded both barrels at it. After the echoes died down, it was still perched atop the stop sign, making an odd chirrup noise that sounded a bit like a sneezing. I was reloading when it jumped down from the stop sign and ran away from us through the brush into the adjacent corner. I finished reloading, waiting until Gus had calmed down, and jogged back to the Jeep. On the way back through, I hit my trail lights at the intersection this happened at and saw that the stop sign had definitely been peppered well with the shot, and that the majority of it had been centered on the animal. The animal had taken a 9-foot standing leap, soundlessly perched perfectly on a 2-foot square area, and had taken 2 12-gauge loads of birdshot center mass and sneezed at me. On the way out of town, I told my story to a Spanish-speaking clerk at the local gas station who laughed and told his coworker, "You hear that? This Garo ran into the El Chupacabra." Today's final experience. I seriously need help. I'm terrified out of my mind. I'll start off by saying I've never believed in the paranormal. I'm a pretty science-based guy. I've always looked for the logical explanation. I still am for this. I haven't had much time for leisure with work recently. Been having to accept some pretty awful shifts to get by with COVID times, so I lost my ability to go on my evening walks, which are a method of stress release for me. It had been a while since I had gone on one, so 3 nights ago I decided to just go for a late night walk. I put my headband flashlight and decided to take a path I hadn't been on in ages. There's a small trail near the back of my neighborhood that goes about 4 miles deep into the woods. My plan was to walk about 1.5 miles in and take a parallel path that comes back. I make it down to around 1.3 miles, according to my Fitbit, and I start getting the feeling of being watched. I turn off my headlamp and sit still and listen. At this point, I'm more concerned there's a guy following me who's up to no good. I heard clear footsteps in the leaves off the trail, and they've been behind me for nearly 5 minutes. I stopped thinking it was an animal or another walker and became worried. Sitting there for probably 3 to 4 minutes, and I hear nothing at all. I turn back on my headlamp and decide to start walking quickly home. About 2 minutes later, I heard the footsteps again. This time, it sounded different. Sounds like 4 feet instead of 2, and it's walking at the same increased speed I am. I turn around quickly with my headlight and my phone light and point behind me. Silence. I get angry and yell out, "Leave me alone, I'm going to call the cops. And if you come at me, I have a knife." Silence. I yell again to get away from me and start walking towards where I heard the walking. About 20 yards out, hard to fully make out because the flashlight doesn't reach too far, I see what looks like a literally naked man running full speed on all fours into the woods. Normally, I'd chalk it up to drugs, but my area doesn't have a drug problem, and there were some details that led me to believe that this was not a person. For one, they were damn near hairless, completely bald, pale white skin, and the way it ran on fours looked natural, not like when you try to run on all fours and look stupid. It looked like its bone structure was designed to walk on all fours. There was no hunch to look, its back was flat, and they were fast. Last thing that happened was straight out of a horror movie. I hadn't heard anything in a while on my way back, but kept turning around to be sure. With about 0.3 miles left to go until I was in the clear, I heard a mad dash through the leaves. I whip around and it stops on a dime. I see the edges of its head behind a tree and yell loudly to try to intimidate. What I heard next I'll never forget for my entire life. It cackled like a monkey, a noise I've literally only heard on nature documentaries. The tone was that of mockery, a predator having fun with me. I didn't stick around. I sprinted as fast as I could back home. I'd love to believe this was some prank or some rabid, bald, diseased coyote, but I got a pretty clear look at it, and it wasn't. It had human feet and human hands, a human head and a human buttocks, but nothing else about it was human. I called the cops after and told them a man was following me. I didn't want to say some creature because I didn't want them to think I was crazy. They didn't find anything, but they did see quite a bit of activity in the leaves and the dirt about 50 feet from where the trail was, leading far back into the woods before it got to a large stretch of grass where no footprints were seen. After some internal debate, I decided I was going to go back because otherwise it would eat at me not knowing what this thing was. When I first saw it, I had zero idea what it could be. I figured some drugged out or mentally ill man, a prankster, or a sickly deformed animal. After letting it all settle, though, there was just no way any of that was the case. I was trying to justify it in my mind because I've always been a heavy skeptic and anything paranormal. Still am, to be fair, but I'm warming up to the idea that crawlers may actually exist. So I messaged 3 of my buddies, told them everything that happened in detail over text, and asked if they'd come have a look with me. Them being non-believers like me and also just loving adventure and spooky stuff were more than excited to go. 2 of my friends have guns, and so do I, so we all brought them. One friend had a pistol, one had a shotgun. I had my pistol as well. The other friend was in charge of holding flashlights and giving us the light, one being a phone flashlight, so he would be ready to take pictures at any moment. We waited until 9:30 p.m. when it was completely dark and headed down that same trail I did the last time I was there. My heart was pumping out of my chest, but I felt more confident having friends there. They were joking around, and the thought this was pretty cool. And I tried joking back a few times, but that reality was as I was pretty nervous. We walked a full 1.5 miles. I had planned on walking last time and didn't encounter a thing. We had prepped for so long, though, and didn't want to give up quite yet, so we kept walking. About 5 to 10 minutes later, at close to the 2-mile mark, we started hearing some noises way back in the woods. It wasn't close, but it was loud enough to us to take notice. I told my friend to turn off the flashlight for a second, and we listened. The bipedal footsteps made their way closer to us, still far, but definitely coming our way. Sounded like they were wearing boots or something because the heaviness of the steps were quite loud. That, or there were a lot of leaves, which, to be fair, is possible. It was off the trail, so it's all woods back there. Once the footsteps made it about 20 to 30 yards away, I called out asking if someone was there. Footsteps stopped only for a brief second. A second later, the bipedal footsteps turned to what sounded like something sprinting on all fours. My friend immediately turned the flashlights on, but there was nothing visible through the dense forest. At the beginning of the trail, the forest is pretty clear, but further back it gets a lot more dense, so it's hard to tell. Once he turned on the light, the footsteps stopped as well. None of us were talking. Paranormal believer or not, hearing that will scare the crap out of you. My friend unholstered his pistol and kept it by his side. He looked at me, and I could see that he was not having a good time anymore. My friend holding the camera was visibly shaking and was darting his glance between all of us. Third friend, shortly after, yelled into the woods, "I see you! Come out, stop messing with us. We have guns and we'll shoot. I don't want to hurt you over some dumb joke. Come on now." We hear the sound again I mentioned before, that cackle. This time it was more of a yell, shriek, aggravated noise. I don't know what to compare it to. I just know it gave me goosebumps. My friend immediately shot his gun into the woods, causing my ears to ring horribly due to me being right next to him. I couldn't hear crap, but I noticed that his gaze went from one spot that we heard the footsteps from over to the right of that spot, about 90 degrees. I followed his gaze for about half a second and caught a glimpse of it again, a tall, human-like thing running on all fours behind the tree. He started walking toward that direction, but my friend with the flashlight stopped him. He made the point that it was buckshot. The chances he missed were slim due to the fact that the tree it was next to was covered in evidence. The shot was on target. My friend also made another scary point that we hadn't considered. What if it hit it, but it didn't hurt it? What if he was right? What if that thing took a shotgun hit, didn't fall over? My estimate, it was 6 foot, maybe 6.5 feet, 140 to 165 pounds. So if it could still run after a shot, it either didn't get hit or it was something we definitely didn't want to be messing with. We hear that cackle again, that mocking noise, not so much aggravated now. More so, a noise that gave the impression it was having fun or enjoying the fear we blatantly had in our voices. No more footsteps, but my friend shot in the general direction again. Ears started ringing again. We couldn't hear anything. But I did see a small glimpse of it, running deeper into the woods. Could only see its rear for a second or two before it was too far to be seen by the light. This meant it was running very quickly. I don't want to give a number, but if I'd have to guess, it was around 20-25 miles an hour or so, through dense woods. Nothing a human could do on all fours, and that's for damn sure. We turned around and jogged back home. Upon getting home, we talked about what we had seen. Nobody was disputing me now. We all had seen it. We talked all night. But we did all agree that if this was paranormal, that a crawler was the best guess we had. Now we're all on the same page. We still didn't know if we bought in paranormal claims, but this one is starting to convince us. We realized at the end that we hadn't even looked for the pictures. We asked a friend on the phone, and he shyly admitted that he hadn't even thought to take a single picture. I'm not going to lie, guys. I was so terrified I didn't even open the camera app. I was just trying to make sure it wasn't behind us or charging us. I'm sorry. We told him not to worry. None of us would have been any better about being calm enough to take a picture. I never saw its face, though, but the friend who took the shot swears it didn't have one, or at least no eyes. He couldn't see if it had a mouth, but it was around a third out from behind the tree, and from his angle he saw it was blank from the nose area up, or if it did have eyes, it was too black to be noticed. We all decided we were going to go back. We'll be more prepared next time. We'll do some more research. We'll have a camera strapped to us, always recording. We know what to expect, so we'll be more calm. Well, we end up going back. We spent time getting prepared, strong flashlights, walkie-talkies, with one new party member staying home for emergencies. Better camera, knife, bat, and the same guns. We were confident, probably too confident, which led us to playing ourselves. I deeply apologize. But for now, all I can say is after these events that happened that night, I needed to take a break from life and start going to therapy. I've met with a therapist a few times, and it's significantly helping me to process all the new data that's flooding in my head. If I'm to be honest, I think she thinks I'm full of crap, but I generally can't blame her. She does a great job at listening and offering real advice, even if she thinks I'm schizophrenic or delusional. The only reason she hasn't started trying to recommend me to a specialist is due to my friends coming along with me one time, where she heard all of us share that story. I promise eventually I'll share the events that transpired that night, but I generally have been on the brink of a mental breakdown for quite some time. In summary, though, I'll give you an idea of what I'm processing. We did see it, up close in fact. The things that happened while in its presence have haunted my nightmares and plagued my mind during the days. One friend was injured fairly badly and needed medical attention, not on the verge of death or anything, but he did not look good. He's okay and has since recovered very well, but mentally he's probably worse off than me. Understandably so. Since all of this, my friends and I are now diagnosed with severe PTSD. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this middle of the night bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I really love doing uploads like this. Some of my favorites were like rereading the old lectures from Phil Schneider, Tom Castiello. One of my heroes, Bill Cooper. Oh my God. Just amazing stuff. So I hope that you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. With that, everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures and these subjects are real. They are out there, and it is dangerous. Share this information with the people you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.